It's been a year of high-level negotiations between Iran and the United States, the United Kingdom, China, Russia, France, and Germany, but they failed to reach a comprehensive agreement. Instead, they've extended the deadline for a deal to the end of next June. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry spoke about the challenges of reaching a deal.
These talks aren't going to suddenly get easier just because we extend them. They're tough, and they've been tough, and they're going to stay tough.
Meanwhile, the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani expressed optimism about the progress made so far.
We still have the opportunity to negotiate over the next few months to reach the final goal of a final agreement. This is what everyone has in mind. I have no doubts over the success of this approach, and for the world community, there is no other alternative path to negotiations.
To get the latest on these developments, I'm joined now by our correspondent, Jack Barton, who's been following the story. He joins us from Brussels. Thanks for joining us, Jack. What are you hearing from the two sides about this decision to extend the talks?
Well, we heard a lot of phrases like real and tangible progress from John Kerry. We also heard the word momentum used a lot by the foreign ministers of Britain and France. But when it came to details of what had actually been discussed, we got very little. Perhaps the person that gave us the best insight into what had transpired at the talks was France's Foreign Minister, Laurent Fabius. He said on the issue of the heavy water reactor that is under construction at Iraq, which has the capability of producing weapons-grade plutonium, that some sort of at least interim agreement had been made where that reactor would not be making the weapons-grade plutonium. So that was one key issue that there appeared to be some progress on. The other one was on monitoring Iran's nuclear program after full agreement is finally in place. And of course, there's still no idea of when that will happen. So there was progress in those areas, but they were not the key issues. And on the key issues, it appears very little progress was actually made.
Right, looking broadly, Jack, at how these talks are being characterized, we had the German foreign minister who said nobody is walking away from these talks feeling depressed. So it seems to be upbeat on both sides.
Well, there wasn't a sense of frustration at the talks, but not being depressed, of course, is not to say they're optimistic or feeling upbeat. You didn't get a sense there was an upbeat feeling towards the end of the talks, because, as I said before, on the big issues, there really didn't seem to be any progress, and that's on the issue of sanctions, or winding back all the Western sanctions. Iran wants them dropped altogether, not just suspended, but there would be trouble even suspending them at the moment. The really big issue, though, is on Iran's uranium-enriching centrifuges. Currently it has 18 to 19,000 of them. The permanent 5 members of the Security Council plus Germany would like to see that number reduced to around 4,500. Currently, Iran is sticking to a reduction of around 10,000, which is actually the number it has in operation at the moment. It was hoped they would reduce that a little bit down to 8,000, but it seems even on that issue, there was no movement. So really here we've got an agreement to hold talks. It's just more talks, but really on the big issues, we haven't really had much progress at all. Not a sense of frustration, but I wouldn't say optimism.
And speaking of sanctions, the current sanctions that are in place, do they stay in place or will there be a gradual easing over the next, 7 months or so?
No, they stay in place as they are. There is no easing, but what Iran will continue to receive is around $700 million a month. That's money that has been frozen, most of it oil revenue. They will receive that money each month. What has perhaps had a bigger effect, though, is just the stabilizing influence of these talks. So on top of that money, we've seen trade growing with Germany last year. There has been a slight economic recovery, and it's created the space for Iran to start work on a trade deal with China and with Russia. So, no, there's no easing of the sanctions per se, but there are measures in place which have benefited Iran since this interim agreement came into place, and they will stay in place while this extension is going on.
Okay, thanks, Jack. CCTV's Jack Barton there reporting from Brussels.